Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the introduction to the digital DMRB. My name is Maria Piangelino, and I am a principal engineer at WSP. Over the last 5 years, I have been working closely with Highways England to develop and deliver the vision for the future DMRB. So I'm delighted today to present this webinar and to illustrate some of the key achievements from this work. The purpose of this webinar is to give a high-level overview of the new digital DMRB after the launch in April 2020. There are 5 areas that I'd like to cover today, and I will summarize in the agenda for you now. First of all, I will start presenting the transformation of the DMRB from where we were in 2015 and where we are now. I will then present the new DMRB structure and related website. And then in part 3, I will illustrate the new style of DMRB documents. And related to that, in part 4, I'll give an overview of the new departures process and what is changed. And finally, I will present some of the general documents you need to be aware of. Let's start with the transformation of the DMRB. So the work on the DMRB has been driven by a specific requirement, an obligation on Highways England, which is set out in the license requirement and protocol, the framework document. And this obligation was about undertaking an initial review of usability, structure and content of the DMRB, and then develop a work program to refresh the DMRB during the first third period, thus by March 2020. And a key aspect was to essentially deliver a new DMRB, which was user-orientated, so it should reflect the needs of the users. In 2015, when this project started, the situation was as presented in this slide. So we had 15 volumes, almost 400 documents, a combination of DMRB documents and interim advice notes related to the DMRB. There were over 15,000 pages requiring editorial review, technical update, or withdrawal. The entire volume set was out of date. On average, documents were 15 years old, but there were also documents about 25-30 years old. And because of the age of the documents and the way the documents were presented, Highways England received a significant number of departures, about 2,000 per year. And considering that each departure has a significant cost, we are talking about almost 21K, there was significant spent around the process of each departure. The DMRB documents were also inconsistent in style and format, including the way in which national variations were presented, and overall the volume set was not intuitive to use or to navigate. So this was the situation in 2015. And after 5 years, the DMRB as currently stands is completely different. We have a digitalized volume set with a significant reduction around 60% in terms of number of documents and almost 50% reduction in the size of the documents. The average age by March 2020 was 0.3 years. The entire content has been updated, and we've already seen a reduction in the number of departures, and we forecast a reduction of about 60% over the next few years. The volume set is now consistent in style and format, and I will provide more details about that in the next few slides. And you will also see how the national content is now presented in a much more consistent fashion. The DMRB is also intuitive to use, is quicker to navigate. We have a new structure, a new website, and I will present these aspects to you in the next few minutes. In order to do that, we have introduced an innovative and radical approach. The Technical Standard Enterprise System represents one of the key achievements from this project. It is a cloud-based software system commissioned by Highways England, and it is made up of the following modules. There is a collaborative authoring and review system, CARS, which has been used extensively to author the new DMRB documents. There's a standards forward program tracker called JIRA, and this has been used to manage the entire work program. We developed a new departures approval system, DAS3, a new technical standards index and archive, an open API directly to requirements and advice, and a new publication portal, a new website. All the applications in the TSCS framework are built on real-time collaboration and facilitate remote yet immersive collaboration. The TSCS thus helps maximize value and minimize waste in the management, production, governance, and publication of technical standards. It is an international leading technology, and it has made possible new opportunities for digital design and construction. Now that I have given you the context for the digital DMRB, the new DMRB, let me move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the new DMRB structure and website. The previous structure of the DMRB was as indicated on this slide. There were 15 volumes, and the way in which the content was presented was not always consistent, because there are some volumes dealing with specific asset types, some other volumes dealing with life cycle stages, subject areas. So the entire structure has been reviewed to make it consistent and easy to navigate. A new, more intuitive metric structure has been built around disciplines and asset life cycle stages. The new document parts are related to disciplines. You can see at the top of the metrics the 4 areas set around general principles and scheme governance, G, sustainability and environment with the L, civil engineering with C, and technology with the T. The new document volumes are related instead to life cycle stages, which are on the left-hand side of the screen. So starting with general information from appraisal up to disposal of the asset. And the appropriate location into the new structure is guaranteed by the identification of the relevant life cycle stage. This in turn depends on the primary audience of the document. So for example, requirements and advice relevant to those undertaking maintenance on the network are provided under M, maintenance and operations. Instead, requirements and advice related to design for maintenance are given under the letter D for design. So users will therefore be able to quickly locate the required information in a logical and consistent manner. There are some important aspects you have to bear in mind when searching for documents. So first of all, some of the documents that in the past you were familiar with probably have been split into 2 or more documents to reflect the different life cycle stages. And construction requirements, which previously were provided in some cases within the DMRB, moved to the MCHW for now, but we expect to bring them back from the MCHW into these metrics. You can see a specific row here on construction C. So during RIS2, work will be done to update the MCHW, so we expect this content to come back to these metrics under this specific row. And then the document code. Now, you probably have seen on the new website the documents have changed their code. And the reason why this happened is because the new document code reflects the metric structure. So let me explain you how the document code works. The new document reference comprises 5 digits. The first two digits are based on the location of the document within the structure, so they are a combination of document part, discipline, and volume, life cycle stage. The final three digits instead are a number allocated by the policy group responsible for the part to which the document is allocated. So for example, CS455 is essentially a document dealing with civil engineering. Under the assessment, in terms of life cycle stage, it is an assessment document. And 455, as I said, was allocated by the policy group. So because it is 455, it's about structures and bridges. So a new website has been developed based on the DMRB metric structure. You can see on this slide the homepage, which is accessible from the standardsforhighways.co.uk website. So if you scroll down, you can actually find 9 boxes which reflects the 9 disciplines that I showed you in the previous slides. And you can find documents based on disciplines. Importantly, the box related to general principles and scheme governance is particularly important because it contains a number of general documents you need to be aware of and which I will present you under part 5 of this presentation. So how to find documents? Now, there are different ways. You could search using the bars at the top of the screen. So you can see these 2 bars here with the 2 red arrows. And you can now search for document using either the old document code like BD44 or the new one like CS455. Alternatively, you can filter by discipline, so you can click on one of the 9 boxes that I showed you a few seconds ago. And when you click on each of them, there will then be another web page which will give you the chance to filter by life cycle stages. So you can then decide whether you need a document dealing with design or maintenance and so on. The new website also gives you the updates related to the DMRB. So if you are on the home page, on the top of the page, you can then click on dates, and then this page will come up, which will tell you whether the document is published in publishing, withdrawing, partially withdrawing, or it is an amendment. But for the first time, there is an easy access to the archive of withdrawn DMRB and interim advice notes documents starting from February 2001 without having to request them by email. So again, if you're on the home page and then you click on archive at the top of the home page, you will then find this page giving you the chance to find the archive documents from February 2001. So when you're searching for an old document with a single digit like BD2, please make sure that you include a 0 in the search, because otherwise you will not find any results. So you have to type BD02 here. And another important tip is the date fields on the archive search page always default to today's date if left blank. So please remember to update this information when searching for archived documents. To summarize the key benefits, now we have a refreshed website with new look and feel. The new website enables easy searching for the DMRB documents, quicker and more intuitive browsing for documents relevant to a specified discipline or an asset lifecycle stage, quicker access to the documents, their metadata and revision history. It is accessible from tablets and mobile phones. It provides easy access to the archive of withdrawn DMRB and interim advice notes without having to request them by email. and it also enables to track the previous versions of documents over time and to identify what DMRB documents were valid on a specified date back to 2001. Standards will also be available in both HTML and PDF formats. To summarize, in part 1 I have presented the key changes of the DMRB. Then I presented the new DMRB structure, the metric structure, and the associated website. Now I'm going to present the new style of DMRB documents. The new DMRB documents have all the same style and format, with some initial sections which are similar across all documents. I'm talking about the forward, introduction, terms and definitions and symbols, the scope, and then there are the specific sections relevant for each document. So there is a core document which contains the requirements and advice relevant for the 4 organizations. But then if one of the overseeing organizations would like to provide different or additional requirements to those given within the core document, then they do so within the national application annexes. So please check whether there are national application annexes appended to the core document, because those annexes will provide client-specific requirements and advice that you have to use in conjunction with the core document. And I also want to emphasize that the core document is valid for the 4 organizations, not just for Highways England. So for people working with Highways England, they also have to check if there is a national application annex for Highways England requirements and advice. Another important aspect in the new DMRB documents is related to the clause style and the related verb forms. In this slide on the left-hand side, you can see an example of old clause in DMRB documents. The old clauses were typically made up of a variety of different types of information. There were requirements, recommendations, permissions, everything within one clause. It was very difficult then to understand what was a requirement, what was advice. There was a significant number of departures put against advisory clauses because they were provided in conjunction with requirements. So as a result, an important part of the work done over the last few years during the DMRB program was to detangle these kind of clauses. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the result of this work. Now clauses are shorter, clearer, easier to understand because they only provide one specific information for each clause. So they can only provide one requirement, one permission, or one recommendation for each clause. So in order to support this new clause style, a new numbering system has been introduced. So when you see a two-level numbering system, then the clause is a requirement which will contain either a shall, which is a requirement of the overseeing organization, or a must, which is a legislative or statutory requirement. Then associated with this two-level numbering system, you can find an advice clause with a 3-level number containing the verbs should or may, whether it is a recommendation should or a permission given to the user may. Then you can find notes provided against requirements or against advice. And notes generally provide a statement of facts or background information, clarification of concepts. So this is how the new clause style works. And I've also presented you the new verbal forms and how this style works. Then if you want to know what has changed in a document, then there are a number of places that you can check. You can start looking at the release notes, which is at the start of the document, or you can check the introduction, which also contains background information. You can check the summary on the front page. But there is also additional information provided by the relevant SES disciplines through a number of webinars for each document. Or if you're working within Highways England or the other overseeing organizations, you can also have access to the change logs and background documents for each of the new documents. This information is for internal use only, so you can't share with external suppliers. These documents have not been made published, but you can access this information and understand what has changed in a document. So the next item that I will present, and this is very much connected with what I've just said in terms of verbal forms and new clause style, is the departures process and how it works now. So over the last few years, specific work has been undertaken to move from DAS2 to DAS3, which is a single browser-based information system for Highways England and the supply chain to submit and analyze and approve departure applications. It provides an intuitive user interface. It enables to collaborate in real time with the supply chain. It promotes higher quality submissions and value-added submissions. It facilitates expedient appraisal. It provides enhanced suggested search. It provides a forward look for incoming submissions, and it is also connected with a new departures manual. Importantly, in the new DMRB, you can only you only need to departure from requirements, and when I say requirements, what I mean from shell clauses. A must clause is a clause which contains a legislative or statutory requirement, so you can't departure from the law, but you can departure from a specific requirement of the overseeing organization, so from a shell clause. And the new DMRB has resulted in a 60% drop in departure applications because effectively in the past many applications were made against should clauses to recommendations then. And this will save, we expect to save over £10 million per year thanks to this drop in departures. So now, if you're dealing with a recommendation, a should clause, then in general, recommendations of the DMRB should be adopted. Deviation from the recommendations of the DMRB can be possible because they are not requirements, they are recommendations, but there must be sufficient justification for the deviation, and the justification must be recorded. So there will be specific content provided in the next version of GG101, which clarifies this point. So you can deviate from a recommendation, and a departure is not needed when deviating from them. But please remember to keep a record of the justification for not using them. Yes, so the need to record justification will be confirmed in further update to GG101. So please check the latest version of GG101 when will be issued. The final part of this presentation is about the general documents you need to be aware of. First of all, GG000, which provides a list of withdrawn documents, and publish documents. So you can actually check against new style documents and old style documents what happened to all of them. You can see the current and previous versions, and you can also, but please remember that you could also check and search on the website for the old document reference code, which will return you the new version, the new document. The second document you need to be aware of, which is a really important one, is GG101, giving the introduction to the DMRB. So first of all, GG101 provides the DMRB implementation clause, which tells you what to do when a new DMRB document is issued, so whether or not you should be using it. So the default position is to use the new documents as soon as they are published. However, there may be cases where this is not the best approach because, for example, the contract has reached a stage where the use of the new or revised document would result in significant additional expenses or in delay in the delivery of the work. So you have to discuss with the project manager on the best way forward. GG101 also provides basic requirements applicable to all documents in terms of health and safety and equality, diversity and inclusion. So please double check what GG101 says because these requirements are essential and they are applicable to all documents and to all schemes. GG101 also clarifies the verbal forms, which I mentioned you a few slides ago. So what we mean with shall, with must, should, may or can, and it also clarifies when the departure process applies. The third document you have to be familiar with is GG103. So this is an entirely new document which provides an introduction and general requirements for sustainable development and design. This document is applicable to all designs and to all design lifecycle stages, and it requires that all projects monitor, evaluate, and report on the application of sustainable development and good design. This is a really important document and it links with the Road to Good Design and the Highways England Good Design Vision. So if you see the National Application Annex for Highways England, it will provide a clear link with the Good Design Vision and is essential because it gives these specific requirements in terms of monitoring, evaluating and reporting on the application of these aspects. The last general document you have to be aware of is GG104, which sets out the approach for safety risk assessment. So this document applies to any activity that does or can have an impact on safety on the highways, motorway and trunk road network. Please bear in mind that this is the only DMRB document which applies to Highways England only. And it provides a framework for identifying hazards, assessing, evaluating and managing safety risks and assuring safety risk governance. Up to now, I have presented the key changes to the DMRB, but now I want to give you a flavor of what is next and what we are currently doing to realize the digital transformation for technical assurance and governance. So there are a number of areas where we are focusing our attention. First of all, over the last few months, there has been specific work done to develop a new streamlined governance process to accelerate the updates of documents and recognize that there needs to be a progressive approach to review documents and make changes to them. So over the next few months, this new approach will be implemented and will be implemented and applied across all the DMRB documents. And in conjunction with this, specific work will be done to review, to develop a document review cycle so that DMRB documents will be maintained up to date. There will be specific work done to improve the feedback process, feedback from users, and how this is used to keep the DMRB up to date. Each discipline is also working on their own R&D program to update the documents. We also are applying lessons from the DMRB digitalization and update to other document sets. And I want to mention in particular the work that is going to start on the MCHW and which will follow a similar path to the DMRB in terms of update and digitalization. Highways England is continuing to collaborate with third parties to harmonize standards, recognizing that developing and sharing requirements across different clients provide significant benefits to the supply chain, but also to the asset owners. There is an important component of future work which will be about realizing the digital roads vision and the technical standards enterprise system plays a fundamental role in that respect. We will continue to work on digital integration and machine readability of standards, and also continuing to develop digital tools. In conclusion, in April 2020, the new DMRB was launched and 157 documents were published. The DMRB has now a new structure, the metric structure that I presented you today, and it is presented through a new website which aids searching and navigation to the new documents and provides access to archived versions. You can search documents based on the discipline, or you can also search for specific life cycle stages. The new DMRB documents also have a new format. I showed you how the core document and the national application annexes are related. You have to check that whether there is a national application annex attached to your document, because that provides client-specific requirements. The new DMRB documents have also a new style, the close style, which is enforced through a new close numbering system. So we have the 2-level number, which is for requirements, and 3-level number for advice. We've also introduced specific verb forms, shall and must for requirements, should, may, and can for advice. And departures only apply to shall clauses. So if you can deviate from a recommendation, a should clause, you don't have to put in a departure, but please ensure that you're keeping a record of why you're deviating from a recommendation. Some documents have changed significantly, so please check release notes, introduction, the summary, which is information provided within the document. You can also access specific webinars delivered by SCS disciplines, and if you're working within the overseeing organizations, you can access the background and the change log as well. This information is not publicly available, but it is there and it is accessible. And finally, there are 4 documents, general documents you have to be aware of. GG000, providing the list of all documents in old style and new versions. GG101, which provides the introduction to the DMRB and the implementation clause. GG103, which is a new document covering sustainable development and good design. And GG104, which covers safety risk assessment. Please let us know what you think about the new DMRB. We are collecting stories, feedback, suggestions for general improvements. So if you want to report your feedback to us, including any technical queries, please send an email to the Standards Inquiries inbox. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you found this presentation useful. Thank you.